Welcome, this is your 5-minute geography lesson. We're covering Theme 7, Element 3, Child Labour. Take your seats, I'm Mr. S and I'll be your 5-minute teacher. There are over 150 million children working around the world. Some of them are working in unsafe conditions and earning very little in the way of pay, often from the age of 6 and above. But why? Well, let's have a look at some of those causes. One of the biggest factors for child labour is the fact that these people are living in poverty. Child labour tends to happen in LICs, although some child labour does happen in HICs as well, but less well documented. So if parents are earning very little in the way of money, then the use of their children to earn money as well is going to supplement their income. But poverty also links into the other factors that you can see on the screen as well. So having no education. In a lot of countries, the infrastructure is just not there to educate every single child. It costs a lot of money to educate people. In the UK, you get your education for free. And while it is free at the point of use, it does get paid for by the taxpayer, which in some cases LICs are not able to do. So where schooling is available, it may be at a price, which because of the poverty, these people can't afford. Or it could be because actually the access to these schools are too far away. There is still a large proportion of people in LICs that live in the countryside, and access to a school building, for example, could be quite difficult. There are no labour laws as well, or very few labour laws. So that's about what can and can't be done in a place of work. So some countries have limited laws preventing child labour. There may not be a set law that states what age a person can start working or what age a person can leave school. So there might not be a mandatory age at which people have to be in school for. But the lack of labour laws is also because they want to try and attract as many MNCs to their country in order to try and stimulate their economy and therefore bring some more money in. So if you have fewer labour laws, it's more attractive to these big MNCs to come into their country. And now I've got AIDS down on here. So HIV/AIDS is a massively debilitating disease which can mean that a lot of the working age people can't work, and therefore they've got to rely on the children in order to bring in the money. But you could replace AIDS with just health in general. If a person or if a workforce is not healthy enough, then they're not going to be able to work and produce money for the family, but also produce the taxes needed for the government in order to spend. So what's actually going on here? Well, there are a few organisations that are trying to reduce the amount of child labour that's going on around the world. So the first one is the ILO, or the International Labour Organization. So they actually go around and they audit different countries. So they sort of look at where child labour is happening or what practices are happening, and they work with the governments to educate and raise awareness and show them ways in which they can try and reduce the amount of child labour that's happening. They've also got the UN, which is a massive political force with the majority of the world's governments being a member of it. And they brought in laws which ban child labour, that include a minimum wage for people that have to earn, and includes the definition of what are we actually classifying as a child worker. Now, these are laws that have been put in place, but not every country has to follow them. Not every country does follow them. And then you've got charities, and I've mentioned Child Hope. And what they do is they go into countries that have a lot of child labour. They work with the general population, educating them on why it's not a good thing. They try and help reduce the impact of wider economic issues so that children don't have to work. But probably one of their biggest roles is in creating awareness in HICs about what products you're buying and potentially that they've been made using child labour. So back in the 90s, Silcott were producing massive amounts of footballs that were used around the world in the Premier League. They were bought by the general population, but they were being produced by child labour and working in very, very poor conditions. And they changed that. The public opinion on this child labour became quite negative, and therefore the companies that were buying the footballs from this location ended up having to change their practices so that child labour wasn't an issue. But the UN does believe that education is probably the biggest factor to reduce the amount of child labour that's taking place around the world. So if we get children into education, it means that they're not working. It means that they can also then improve their life chances in the future as well. So they set some sustainability goals, and some of those included education. So they wanted to halve the number of children not attending school globally. So improving education isn't just for children, it's to educate the general population about why child labour is not necessarily a good thing, and shows why educating girls as well is a good thing. But it also includes infrastructure projects, building new schools, particularly in rural areas so people don't have to travel as far to get to them, and making education compulsory. Like in the UK, education used to be until 16. The government raised it several years ago to now 18. So you have to stay in some form of education or training until you're effectively an adult. Well, that completes our look at child labour. Make the most of your free education by completing the Try It Now tasks. Class dismissed.